In the vast expanse of the Andromeda Galaxy, where stars danced like fireflies and nebulae painted the cosmos with ethereal hues, there existed a civilization that had mastered the art of beauty and elegance. The planet Zythera, a jewel among celestial bodies, orbited a binary star system that bathed its crystalline cities in perpetual twilight. Here, where gravity was slightly lower than Earth's and the air carried a faint lavender scent, lived Princess Lysandra, a being whose very presence could make even the most ancient stars seem dull by comparison. Lysandra's people, the Zytherans, were renowned throughout the galaxy for their perfect symmetry and luminous skin that shimmered with iridescent patterns. Their society, built upon centuries of refinement and artistic achievement, placed immense value on procreation and lineage. Each citizen was expected to contribute to the continuation of their species, maintaining the purity and perfection of their bloodline. For generations, the royal family had been particularly blessed, producing heirs who not only carried the genetic markers of beauty but also possessed enhanced fertility, ensuring the prosperity of their race. Within this carefully orchestrated society, Princess Lysandra stood out as an exceptional specimen of Zytheran perfection. Her hair flowed like liquid silver, catching and refracting light in mesmerizing patterns, while her eyes held the depth of twin galaxies. Her voice, when she spoke, resonated with harmonic frequencies that seemed to align with the very vibrations of the universe. Yet beneath this seemingly flawless exterior lay a secret that would soon threaten to unravel everything she held dear, a secret that contradicted every expectation placed upon her royal shoulders. The palace gardens, where bioluminescent flowers bloomed in perfect synchronization with the planet's rotation, served as Lysandra's sanctuary. It was here, surrounded by the gentle hum of cosmic energy and the soft glow of quantum blossoms, that she often retreated to escape the weight of her position. The elders of the council frequently praised her grace and wisdom, yet their approving glances carried an underlying current of expectation, one that grew stronger with each passing season. As the designated heir to the Zytheran throne, Lysandra's primary duty extended beyond mere governance. She was expected to produce offspring who would carry forward the legacy of perfection. In a society where genetic compatibility and reproductive capability were considered sacred responsibilities, her position demanded nothing less than absolute fertility. The pressure mounted with each ceremonial gathering, where subtle comments about potential suitors and lineage charts filled the air like an unspoken countdown to her biological destiny. What no one knew, not even her closest attendants, was that Lysandra had discovered something during her regular medical examinations, something that contradicted everything her people believed about their royal bloodline. The advanced bioscanners, capable of detecting even the slightest genetic anomaly, had revealed a truth that threatened to shatter the foundation of her existence. She was infertile, unable to fulfill the most fundamental expectation placed upon her as princess and future queen. This revelation wasn't just a personal tragedy. It represented a betrayal of her people's deepest values and traditions. The knowledge weighed heavily on Lysandra, manifesting in sleepless nights spent gazing at the constellations through her observation dome. She watched as new stars were born in distant nebulae, each one representing the cycle of life that she couldn't participate in. The quantum blossoms in the garden, which opened and closed in perfect harmony with the planet's rhythms, seemed to mock her inability to follow nature's intended path. Even the artificial intelligence systems that managed the palace operations, designed to maintain perfect efficiency, appeared to operate with a purpose she could no longer claim. Her condition became her solitary burden, a secret that isolated her from even her own reflection. During council meetings, she found herself avoiding discussions about future generations and succession plans. When ceremonial dances were performed to celebrate the continuity of life, she excused herself early, claiming diplomatic duties or sudden migraines. The weight of her secret pressed against her chest like a black hole, threatening to consume her from within. In a society where fertility was not just a biological function but a cultural imperative, her inability to conceive felt like a personal failure that extended far beyond herself. The day of reckoning arrived during the annual Celestial Harmony Festival, when Zytherans gathered to celebrate the alignment of their binary suns. As tradition dictated, eligible royals participated in the fertility ceremony, a ritual dating back thousands of years where couples demonstrated their genetic compatibility through synchronized bioluminescence. Lysandra stood at the edge of the crystal platform, her heart pounding in rhythm with the ancient drums that echoed through the valley. The crowd below watched with bated breath as each couple stepped forward, their bodies glowing in perfect harmony, symbolizing their ability to create perfect offspring. When it came time for the royal examination, High Counselor Valeth approached Lysandra with a ceremonial scanner, its crystalline surface pulsing with anticipation. As the device hovered over her form, the collective gasp from the assembly was immediate and devastating. Instead of the vibrant golden aura that should have enveloped her, a faint red mist indicated what everyone feared but dared not speak aloud. The princess was barren. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of falling petals from the ceremonial flowers above, each one seeming to echo the shattering of countless expectations. Word spread through the capital city faster than the speed of quantum communication. Within hours, social media platforms buzzed with holographic discussions, each more scathing than the last. "How can we trust a barren ruler?" one prominent geneticist declared during a live broadcast. "Our entire societal structure depends on perfect reproduction. What message does this send to our future generations?" Another commentator, a respected elder named Marine, suggested that perhaps Lysandra's condition was a sign of cosmic imbalance, questioning whether the royal bloodline had become too pure, too refined, leading to genetic stagnation. The public reaction escalated into protests outside the palace gates, where citizens gathered with protest signs made of photon beams. "A sterile throne is a dead throne," read one particularly damning display. News outlets began running special segments analyzing the princess's public appearances, scrutinizing every gesture and expression for signs of weakness. Former suitors came forward, sharing stories of how they had suspected something was amiss during courtship rituals. The once revered princess became a cautionary tale, a symbol of biological failure in a society obsessed with perfection. Even within the palace walls, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Servants who had once bowed deeply now exchanged furtive glances behind her back. Courtiers avoided direct eye contact, their whispers filling the grand halls like static electricity. Her closest advisors distanced themselves, citing conflicting schedules, while younger nobles openly discussed alternative succession plans. The gardens, once her sanctuary, now felt like a prison as she caught glimpses of staff deliberately avoiding certain paths she frequented. The media coverage reached fever pitch when a group of genetic purists launched a campaign called Pure Lineage Movement, arguing that allowing an infertile ruler to ascend the throne would jeopardize the entire Zithran civilization. Daily broadcasts featured scientists presenting complex genetic charts, showing how Lysandra's condition could theoretically lead to a cascade of genetic imperfections across generations. Memes circulated showing the princess's face superimposed on images of dying stars, suggesting that her infertility represented the beginning of their society's cosmic decline. At night, when the protests quieted and the official ceremonies concluded, Lysandra would retreat to her private chambers. There, she faced perhaps the most painful aspect of her ordeal, the messages from former friends and allies. Through encrypted channels, she received heartfelt apologies from those who claimed they could no longer associate with her publicly. Some offered hollow words of support while explaining why they must distance themselves professionally. Others simply ghosted her entirely, their absence speaking louder than any condemnation. The isolation extended beyond social circles to affect every aspect of her life. Invitations to cultural events stopped arriving. Artisans who had once competed for royal commissions now declined projects associated with her name. Even charitable organizations she had previously supported found reasons to redirect their focus elsewhere. The cumulative effect created a vacuum around her, a space where shame and rejection condensed into a suffocating atmosphere that followed her everywhere she went. Yet amidst this torrent of public disgrace, moments of unexpected humanity emerged. A young gardener, tasked with maintaining the ceremonial flowers, continued to greet her warmly each morning despite the disapproving looks from his supervisors. An elderly historian, long retired from active service, sent her handwritten notes containing fragments of ancient texts that celebrated individual worth beyond reproductive capacity. These small acts of kindness, though few and far between, provided brief respites from the overwhelming tide of condemnation. During one particularly grueling press conference, where journalists fired questions about her fitness to rule, Lysandra noticed a peculiar human soldier standing at the back of the room. Captain Elias Drake, part of the intergalactic peacekeeping force stationed on Zithra, maintained an unusually neutral expression while others recorded the spectacle. His presence was unexpected. Humans rarely attended such formal gatherings, and certainly never positioned themselves so prominently. What struck Lysandra most was the absence of judgment in his gaze. Instead, his eyes held a mixture of curiosity and something else she couldn't quite identify. Their paths crossed again several days later in the Crystal Archives, where Lysandra sought refuge among ancient records of Zithran history. Captain Drake was examining historical documents related to human-Zithran relations, his broad shoulders casting shadows across the delicate manuscripts. Unlike the graceful movements of Zithrans, his motions carried a certain deliberate weight, each step measured and purposeful. When he noticed her presence, he straightened immediately, offering a respectful nod that somehow conveyed both military discipline and genuine courtesy. "Princess Lysandra," he acknowledged, his voice carrying the unique timbre of human speech, slightly rougher than Zithran vocal patterns, yet strangely comforting. "I apologize if my presence here intrudes upon your solitude." His words, chosen carefully, revealed an awareness of her situation without directly addressing it. He didn't offer empty platitudes or awkward attempts at comfort. Instead, his demeanor suggested a willingness to share space without demanding anything in return. Over the following weeks, their encounters became more frequent, though never forced or contrived. Captain Drake would appear in the gardens during her evening walks, always maintaining a respectful distance unless she initiated conversation. Unlike Zithrans, who communicated primarily through subtle gestures and facial expressions, he spoke with directness tempered by sensitivity. His questions about Zithran culture displayed genuine interest rather than opportunistic curiosity, and his observations about galactic politics demonstrated an understanding that transcended simple diplomatic protocol. What set Captain Drake apart most noticeably was his complete disregard for the social stigma surrounding Lysandra's condition. While others avoided eye contact or spoke in hushed tones, he engaged with her as if nothing had changed. During a chance meeting in the observatory, where she often retreated to study distant star systems, he shared stories of human civilizations that had overcome similar challenges regarding fertility and inheritance. "On Earth," he explained, "we learned that true leadership isn't defined by biology alone. Sometimes, the most profound changes come from those who challenge traditional expectations." Their developing connection took on additional layers of complexity due to their biological differences. Human lifespan was significantly shorter than that of Zithrans, and their emotional expressions operated on different frequencies. Yet these distinctions seemed to enhance rather than hinder their rapport. Where Zithrans relied on subtle chromatic shifts in their skin to convey emotion, Captain Drake wore his feelings openly in his eyes and posture. This transparency proved both refreshing and challenging for Lysandra, accustomed as she was to the nuanced dance of Zithran interaction. One evening, during a rare moment when the palace was nearly deserted, Captain Drake approached her in the Hall of Echoes. The chamber's crystalline walls amplified even the softest sounds, creating a symphony of ambient noise that seemed to vibrate through one's very being. "Princess," he began, choosing his words with characteristic care, "I've observed your people's emphasis on genetic legacy. But in my experience, true influence extends beyond DNA sequences." He paused, letting the ambient hum of the hall fill the space between them. "Would you permit me to share some perspectives from human history that might offer alternative ways of viewing your situation?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implications yet phrased with such respectful uncertainty that it disarmed any instinctive defensiveness. Lysandra found herself nodding, drawn to the possibility of seeing her circumstances through different eyes. As Captain Drake began recounting tales of human leaders who had transformed societies despite biological limitations, she realized that their conversations had evolved from casual interactions to something far more significant, a bridge spanning not just their individual differences, but the vast chasm between their species' philosophies. The crisis deepened as political factions within the Zithran government began leveraging Lysandra's condition for their own agendas. Traditionalists rallied around the pure lineage movement, organizing mass demonstrations that transformed the capital's central plaza into a sea of protest banners and holographic projections. Meanwhile, progressive voices argued for a re-evaluation of leadership criteria, sparking heated debates in the Grand Assembly chamber. Lysandra found herself at the center of a philosophical maelstrom that threatened to tear apart the very fabric of Zithran society. Captain Drake's presence became increasingly controversial as their relationship drew public attention. Conservative media outlets began speculating about the implications of a human associating so closely with the disgraced princess. Some commentators suggested that his interest might be politically motivated, possibly part of a larger human strategy to destabilize Zithran sovereignty. Others pointed to historic tensions between their species, using their friendship as evidence of cultural contamination. The more moderate voices attempted to frame their interactions as purely professional, but even these defenses carried undertones of doubt. For Lysandra, the situation grew increasingly untenable. Each public appearance brought fresh scrutiny, with reporters dissecting her every interaction with the human soldier. Was that slight smile an indication of inappropriate attachment? Did their shared glances suggest something beyond professional respect? The constant analysis left her feeling like a character in someone else's narrative, her actions interpreted through lenses she couldn't control. Yet paradoxically, Captain Drake's unwavering support provided a strange kind of stability in the chaos. His human perspective helped her see her circumstances from angles she'd never considered before. The internal conflict reached a breaking point during a crucial vote in the Grand Assembly. Progressive ministers proposed amending the succession laws to allow for alternative forms of leadership contribution, while traditionalists pushed for immediate selection of a fertile heir. As the debate raged, Lysandra noticed Captain Drake sitting in the diplomatic gallery, his human features betraying none of the anxiety she knew must be coursing through him. His presence there, in that moment of maximum vulnerability, spoke volumes about his commitment to supporting her while respecting Zitharan protocols. Complicating matters further was the emergence of scientific theories attempting to explain Lysandra's condition. Some researchers proposed that her infertility might be connected to recent cosmic phenomena, suggesting that exposure to certain stellar radiation patterns could have affected her physiology. Others hypothesized about latent genetic mutations that might have remained undetected in previous generations. These explanations, while scientifically plausible, did little to assuage the cultural shock waves rippling through society. If anything, they intensified the debate about whether natural selection processes needed to be artificially enhanced to prevent similar occurrences. Amidst this turmoil, Captain Drake introduced Lysandra to concepts from human philosophy and sociology that challenged Zitharan assumptions about leadership and legacy. During their private discussions in the observatory, he shared stories of human leaders who had achieved greatness through intellectual contributions rather than biological descendants. He spoke of scientists who had changed the course of human history through discoveries, artists who had influenced generations through their creations, and philosophers whose ideas had shaped civilizations long after their deaths. These conversations planted seeds of doubt about the absolute correlation between fertility and leadership effectiveness. The political landscape shifted dramatically when several prominent Zitharan scientists presented findings suggesting that genetic diversity might actually benefit their species in the long term. Drawing parallels from human evolutionary history, they argued that too much emphasis on genetic purity could lead to unforeseen vulnerabilities. This theory gained traction among younger generations of Zitharans, who began questioning the rigid structures of their society. Social media platforms lit up with discussions about alternative measures of worth and contributions to society that transcended biological reproduction. As the debate intensified, Lysandra found herself torn between two worlds. On one side stood her heritage, her people's expectations, and centuries of tradition. On the other stood Captain Drake's perspective, offering a glimpse of possibilities that challenged everything she had been taught. The human concept of individual merit independent of reproductive capability resonated deeply with her, yet accepting these ideas meant confronting the very foundations of Zitharan civilization. Each day brought new revelations, new challenges to her understanding of leadership and legacy, and new questions about the direction her society should take. The mounting pressure began manifesting in unexpected ways within the royal court. Advisors who had once spoken in unified voices now divided into factions, their arguments echoing through the marble corridors like discordant notes in a symphony. Lysandra observed these transformations from her position at the center of the storm, watching as alliances shifted and power dynamics evolved. Some counselors advocated for immediate abdication, while others pushed for experimental procedures that might restore her fertility. The tension escalated during council meetings, where formerly decorous debates dissolved into heated exchanges that sometimes bordered on physical confrontation. Captain Drake's role in this evolving drama grew increasingly complex. His diplomatic status protected him from direct intervention, yet his insights and suggestions carried weight that neither side could ignore. During informal gatherings, he would share anecdotes from Earth's history, drawing parallels between current events and past revolutions in human thinking. These stories, told with careful neutrality, often sparked new lines of discussion among the more progressive members of the court. However, his involvement also drew criticism from traditionalists, who accused him of interfering in Zitharan affairs under the guise of friendship. The media frenzy reached new heights as reporters uncovered details about Captain Drake's background. Articles analyzing his military career, educational achievements, and previous diplomatic missions flooded communication channels. Some pieces focused on his reputation for mediating conflicts between warring factions, while others highlighted his expertise in cross-species diplomacy. These revelations added another layer of complexity to public perceptions of their relationship. Was he merely offering support to a friend in need, or was this part of a larger strategy to influence Zithran politics? Meanwhile, the scientific community launched multiple research initiatives exploring various aspects of Lysandra's condition. Teams of biologists, geneticists, and astrophysicists worked around the clock, their laboratories illuminated by the soft glow of quantum computers processing unprecedented amounts of data. Preliminary findings suggested intriguing possibilities about environmental factors affecting fertility, leading to debates about planetary conditions and their impact on biological development. These discussions spilled over into public forums, where citizens debated whether Zithra's carefully controlled environment might be too sterile, too perfect, to support natural variation. The economic implications of the crisis began surfacing as well. Major corporations involved in genetic enhancement technologies saw their stock prices fluctuate wildly, while pharmaceutical companies specializing in fertility treatments experienced unprecedented demand. The financial sector became entangled in the controversy, with investment firms adjusting their portfolios based on predictions about potential changes in Zithran policies. Even the arts community responded, with new works emerging that explored themes of biological diversity and alternative definitions of contribution to society. In the midst of this chaos, Lysandra and Captain Drake found themselves navigating increasingly treacherous waters. Their conversations, once confined to philosophical discussions, expanded to include practical considerations about possible futures for Zithran society. They explored hybrid models of leadership that incorporated both traditional values and progressive ideas, discussing how to balance biological expectations with intellectual contributions. These discussions often stretched late into the night, illuminated only by the soft glow of distant stars visible through the palace's observation windows. The situation reached a critical juncture when a group of young Zithran intellectuals launched a movement called New Dawn, advocating for a fundamental re-evaluation of societal values. Drawing inspiration from both Zithran traditions and human philosophies, they proposed a framework that emphasized multiple pathways to contributing to society's advancement. Their manifesto, published simultaneously across all major communication platforms, sparked immediate controversy. Elders condemned it as reckless idealism, while younger generations embraced it as a necessary evolution of thought. As the debate intensified, unexpected alliances began forming. Scientists working on fertility research found common ground with philosophers exploring alternative definitions of legacy. Artists collaborating with geneticists created multimedia presentations that challenged viewers to reconsider their assumptions about biological determinism. These collaborations produced surprising results, revealing connections between different fields of study that had previously operated in isolation. The palace itself became a hub of innovation, with impromptu meetings occurring in every available space, from formal conference rooms to secluded garden alcoves. Captain Drake's diplomatic skills proved invaluable during this period of transformation. He facilitated discussions between opposing factions, helping to translate cultural nuances and find common language for expressing divergent viewpoints. His experience in conflict resolution manifested in subtle ways, steering conversations away from personal attacks, encouraging participants to focus on shared goals rather than ideological differences. Though he maintained strict neutrality in official capacities, his influence permeated every level of the ongoing discourse. Lysandra found herself at the nexus of these converging forces, each day bringing new challenges and opportunities. The weight of her position had transformed from a burden of shame into a responsibility to guide her people through unprecedented change. With Captain Drake's support, she began considering possibilities that had once seemed impossible, not just for herself, but for the future of Zithran civilization as a whole. As the New Dawn movement gained momentum, an unexpected development emerged from the scientific community. Dr. Silen, a renowned Zithran geneticist, announced groundbreaking research suggesting that Lysandra's condition might not be a flaw but rather an evolutionary adaptation. His team had discovered dormant genetic sequences in her DNA that appeared to respond to specific cosmic radiation patterns, sequences that could potentially unlock new abilities beyond traditional reproduction. This revelation sent shockwaves through both the scientific and political spheres, forcing society to reconsider the very nature of biological perfection. The announcement coincided with a significant diplomatic event, the annual Galactic Unity Summit hosted on Zithra. As representatives from various species gathered to discuss interstellar cooperation, Captain Drake found himself in an unprecedented position. The human delegation, recognizing the historical significance of Zithra's internal transformation, proposed a joint research initiative combining human and Zithran scientific expertise. The proposal included sharing advanced human technologies for genetic research while incorporating Zithran insights into cosmic energy manipulation. Lysandra stood at the center of this convergence, her role evolving from disgraced princess to pioneering leader. During the summit's opening ceremony, she delivered a speech that would become legendary throughout the galaxy. Rather than defending her right to rule or apologizing for her condition, she spoke about embracing uncertainty as a catalyst for growth. "Perhaps our greatest strength lies not in maintaining perfect cycles," she declared, her voice resonating through the crystalline amphitheater, "but in our ability to adapt and redefine what perfection means. My condition has shown me that sometimes, breaking from tradition opens doors to possibilities we never imagined." Captain Drake watched from his position among the delegates, his human heart swelling with pride yet heavy with the knowledge of their impending separation. His tour of duty was nearing its end, and protocol demanded his return to Earth soon. As the summit progressed, their moments together became increasingly precious. They stole time between official functions, walking through the illuminated gardens where bioluminescent flowers now seemed to pulse with renewed meaning. Their conversations turned more personal, touching on themes of legacy, purpose, and the transient nature of life across different species. The turning point came during the final day of the summit. As delegates prepared to sign the historic research agreement, an emergency message arrived from the High Council. Ancient protocols, long thought obsolete, required a ruling monarch to be present for such significant treaties. With no alternative heir prepared to assume immediate responsibility, the council reluctantly requested Lysandra's formal participation. Standing beside Captain Drake at the signing ceremony, she realized that her journey had come full circle, from being shamed for her perceived inadequacy to becoming the essential figure whose presence validated the most progressive agreement in Zithran history. In the days following the summit, as preparations for Captain Drake's departure intensified, they found themselves facing difficult decisions. The research initiative would require years of collaboration, and while technology allowed for communication across light years, nothing could replace physical presence. One evening, beneath the twin suns' final alignment of the season, Captain Drake presented Lysandra with a small wooden box containing earth soil and seeds. "These are ancient redwood seeds," he explained, his voice carrying the weight of unspoken words. "They take centuries to reach their full potential. Like them, some legacies grow slowly, spanning generations beyond our lifetimes." The morning of his departure arrived too quickly. As his shuttle ascended through Zithra's atmosphere, Lysandra stood on the observation platform, feeling neither despair nor resolution. Instead, she experienced a profound sense of possibility. The seeds in her pocket felt like a promise, not just of continued connection, but of evolution itself. Her people had begun planting these seeds symbolically throughout the capital, creating gardens that represented hope for a future where worth wasn't measured by traditional standards alone. Months later, as the first research teams began their work and the New Dawn movement gained official recognition, Lysandra implemented changes that would reshape Zithran society. She established institutions dedicated to exploring alternative forms of contribution, created programs that celebrated intellectual and artistic achievements alongside biological ones, and fostered unprecedented collaboration between species. The redwood seeds sprouted slowly, their growth mirroring the gradual transformation of her civilization. Captain Drake, back on Earth, followed developments through official channels while continuing his diplomatic work. Though separated by countless light years, their influence intertwined across the stars. Human scientists contributed to Zithran research while incorporating alien insights into their own projects. The friendship between their species deepened, built on mutual respect and shared vision rather than mere political convenience. Years passed, and Lysandra's leadership ushered in an era of unprecedented innovation and cultural evolution. The dormant sequences in her DNA remained active, occasionally manifesting in subtle ways that suggested her condition might indeed represent a step in Zithran evolution rather than a deviation from it. Children born during this period grew up in a society that valued multiple forms of contribution, their education emphasizing both traditional values and progressive thinking. On a quiet evening, decades after Captain Drake's departure, Lysandra visited the original garden where they had planted the first redwood seed. The young tree now stood several meters tall, its growth pattern influenced by Zithra's unique gravity and atmospheric conditions. As she placed her hand against its bark, she received a quantum message, a recording from Earth showing rows of similar trees thriving in human soil, tended by descendants of those who had participated in the initial exchange program. Their story, once marked by shame and controversy, had become a legend of galactic cooperation and evolutionary progress. Neither human lifespan nor Zithran traditions had defined their impact. Instead, their legacy extended far beyond individual lives, influencing generations to come. In the Grand Observatory, where stars formed and died in endless cycles, their combined influence continued to shape the destiny of two species, learning that true evolution often requires stepping outside traditional boundaries. The redwoods, growing simultaneously on two worlds separated by vast distances, served as living monuments to the power of understanding and adaptation. Each ring in their trunks recorded not just years, but moments of change and growth, proving that sometimes the most enduring contributions emerge from circumstances initially perceived as limitations. And in the twilight of her reign, as new leaders took their places in a transformed society, Lysandra understood that true legacy isn't measured by what one produces, but by the possibilities one creates for others to explore and evolve.